Greetings, dear viewers. My name is Vasil Pikno. I am a Ukrainian journalist, and for the entire English-speaking audience who will be listening further, this is an overview of the battle map as of May 28th. I am presenting this material for your attention. Please join in to watch it. Be sure to give a like so that more people can learn truly objective information directly from Ukraine. In other words, help make this video more popular, write your comments, and subscribe to us. And today, for the next 15 minutes, I will tell you about how massive fires are currently affecting Russian ammunition depots, as well as about the rather difficult situation on the Ukrainian side in the defense of the Donetsk sector of the front. And also about how the former Russian president, a certain comrade Medvedev, decided to threaten the world with a third world war. So let's begin. Take a look at this wonderful device that I'm showing you right now. What is this? This is an air defense system, an automatic air defense turret called the Sky Sentinel. It has integrated artificial intelligence, and its main task is the effective destruction of enemy drones such as the Shahed 136. In recent days, Ukraine has suffered an unprecedented attack by Russian drones. No country in the world could have coped with such an intense barrage as the one unleashed on Ukraine. In fact, 1,000 drones landed on our territory in just 4 days. And this is actually an extremely serious challenge for Ukrainian society. Accordingly, any technological advancements, any technological developments that make our Ukrainian air defense stronger also make the whole world potentially stronger in the face of the threats posed by how Russia has poured money into its own economy. Because when today we read articles in various Western publications, such as The Economist or the Financial Times, which write that Russia will soon, in the foreseeable future, reach the production and launch of up to 1,000 Shaheds, up to 1,000 attack drones per day. Many in the West think that this concerns only Ukraine, but in reality, that's not the case. This does not concern only Ukraine. This is an issue that has a much broader scope and a longer horizon for the use of such drone technologies, such unmanned systems. So, dear Western friends and partners, pay attention to what Ukraine is already using today to defend itself. And these turrets, among other things, are a response to the destruction of enemy drones. Let me repeat once more. The automatic Sky Sentinel turret with artificial intelligence. It destroys and is capable of destroying not only Shaheds, but also detecting and shooting down much smaller targets than Shaheds, such as reconnaissance drones, as well as high-speed cruise missiles in all cases, essentially and practically autonomously. This system, as claimed, has already shot down at least 4 Shaheds during the latest attacks. So basically, in combat conditions, shooting down 4 Shaheds is a very good start for such a turret. The cost of one of these is $150,000. In fact, that's not a fantastic price. Missiles for man-portable air defense systems sometimes cost significantly more than this entire complex with its firearms, which costs $150,000. For example, to protect each rear city from drones, you need at least 10 to 30 of these units. Currently, preparations are underway for the mass production of such turrets, these air defense platforms, anti-aircraft missile systems of our Ukrainian manufacture. That is why there is a huge appeal to Ukrainian local councils. Dear colleagues, this is in your interest. Purchase, inquire about, and acquire these turrets, 10 to 30 units for your own protection. This is your personal, most immediate interest, because the state will not be able to provide for everyone. And this is exactly where you can invest in your own safety. Shahed drones currently pose a truly serious threat to us, so it is necessary to invest your resources in countering them. This is without a doubt. The next topic I want to discuss first is the publication by the Washington Post regarding Ukraine's expectation of a rather powerful Russian summer offensive. And attention, as the Washington Post writes, in the Donetsk region. I am absolutely in agreement and completely share the opinion of the journalists. I constantly emphasize this idea that in fact the main target of the enemy's strike during the upcoming operations, which have already begun and will evidently become even more active in the summer, will be the Donetsk region, because it is precisely the Donetsk region that will determine the configuration of the front. Let me explain very simply in layman's terms why this is the case. As of now, and I will talk more about this today when discussing the battle map, Donetsk is the area where the enemy has a certain advantage, where the enemy is advancing, and where the enemy is creating threats for us, where the enemy is expanding the front line. Expanding the front line automatically means pulling more Ukrainian reserves and resources closer directly to the front in the east of our country. And where can these resources come from? From other sections of the front, such as the north, Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv regions, as well as the south, Zaporizhia, Kherson regions. This is where the key is hidden. That is, Russia can, and I really don't like, in fact, this informational shift in the agenda, especially in Western media, this constant automatic review of, oh my God, now Kharkiv is under threat, now Sumy is under threat. In reality, the threat there is not as great as the one that exists in Donbass, where the Russians have concentrated their strike forces and will undoubtedly be addressing their main strategic objectives. In my opinion, this will be the blockade of Pokrovsk and an attempt to blockade Kostiantynivka during the upcoming summer campaign. These are the main threats, which, after all, the Washington Post also writes about, and I am absolutely in agreement with them in this context. The main strike by Russian forces should be expected in Donbass. The next topic worth raising is Dmitry Medvedev, the former president of the Russian Federation, who suddenly popped up on Twitter with threats, not to just anyone, but to the American president, Donald Trump. He wrote a tweet, a post, well, whatever you call it. He definitely doesn't know English, though. Someone on his behalf, with their own hands, decided to threaten Donald Trump with World War III. I quote, "As for Trump's words about Putin playing with fire and about really bad things that will happen to Russia, I know one really bad thing, World War III. I hope Trump understands this." This tweet is a response to a post by Trump, where he says that Putin doesn't even realize what bad things Trump is actually holding back from Russia. He is holding back the whole world so that Russia doesn't fall into the abyss of this catastrophe. To me, this basically sounds strange. It turns out that the American president is publicly admitting that he is playing into Russia's hands and is holding back so that Russia doesn't fall into a global total catastrophe. Well, you have to admit that's kind of strange. To put it mildly, it sounds strange. And then there's also the former Russian president who decided that he can and has the right to allow himself such things and started threatening with a third world war. And you know, I read a very good phrase in the Ukrainian segment of Telegram about how, when reading these tweets from two politicians, let's say not young, Ukrainians read and mentally quote the slogans from the recruitment campaign of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, where the main thing they publish, the main message, is that we supposedly are ready for any scenario, even if it's aliens falling from the sky and we have to capture their saucer as a trophy. Even if it's anything at all, even if there are further threats, even if it's a third world war, we are ready for everything. And in fact, Ukrainians are prepared for this like no one else in the world. This ranges from the context of relentless attacks by Shaheds, missiles, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, or anything else, to this damned neighborhood with a country like the Russian Federation.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
That is what we are, in fact, prepared for. Well, friends, let's move on to the battle map. Oh, by the way, before I do that, I have another recommendation for Medvedev. It would be better to pay attention to what's happening once again with the Russian forests, because such terrible fires are happening again right before the summer season. Russia has this problem, especially in Siberia or the Far East, where the forests start burning very intensely. This happens not least because many Russian workers, skilled specialists in various fields, including forestry, have simply died in the war in Ukraine, or they are at this very moment dying in the war in Ukraine. Because the time is approaching when Russia's losses in this war will reach exactly 1 million in just over 3 years, 1 million in the 21st century. And we are witnessing the striking consequences of this. Here's another video, not just of forest fires, but of fires that are actually affecting a depot in the Amur region. This is the 304th Ammunition Depot of the 35th Combined Arms Army of Russia. It is located in the Amur region. This depot was supposedly closed back in 2011, but to this day, it is still guarded by Russian troops. Why? Well, as they say, the question remains open and is rather rhetorical. But we can see how it is burning there. I don't know whether the main reason is really a seasonal fire or if some kind of sabotage took place at that depot. I get the impression that it's a seasonal fire because that's quite a common scenario for the Russian Federation. It would be better if they watched out for a third world Armageddon over there instead of threatening the whole world with a third world war. This is what the depot looks like in satellite images. It's quite a massive, not at all small building. This is how it all looks in satellite images or from the satellite monitoring system of the American Space Agency, NASA firms, which detects fire hotspots. So we can see that both around and directly at this depot, there are very active fires, trees, warehouses, apparently buildings. Everything around is burning. It would be better if Medvedev and Putin took care of this instead of telling stories and threatening the whole world with a third world war. Let's move on to the sections of the Ukrainian front. Today, I will only confirm the Washington Post's opinion that the Donbas will be the site of the enemy's main offensive, because the enemy is clearly focusing on two cities. In my opinion, these two cities are Kostiantynivka, and the second city is Pokrovsk, together with Mirnohrad. As for Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad, the campaign there has long since begun. The enemy is pressing and continues to put pressure now on Udakne. By the way, take note, suddenly everyone seems to have forgotten that the Russians are very close to the borders of Dnipropetrovsk region. This was simply removed from the information agenda for the day. It just stopped being the talking point that the occupiers wanted to achieve by May 9th, the one they spread in their various narratives, saying, "We're almost there. We've almost reached the borders of Dnipropetrovsk region, just a little more, just a bit further." And they wanted to accomplish this by May 9th in order to present this surprise and gift like, look, we've expanded the war to the Dnipropetrovsk region. But what about today? Today, that's no longer the case. Today, unfortunately, there's a different narrative. Putin has thrown it into the information space, and both Ukrainian, Western, and pretty much all global media have eagerly picked it up. The threat in the north, Putin will capture Sumy, Putin will capture Kharkiv, but that's not going to happen. They don't have the strength or the capability for any of that. It's all just information manipulation. Just like the so-called Oreshnik missile, which doesn't even exist, was also an information ploy. There was only one of them, a prototype that flew to Dnipro with exactly 0 warhead. It fell, caused no damage, and there is no point to this missile. It's empty, it's a dud, as they say. Then there are other narratives like capturing borders, advancing to the borders of the Dnipropetrovsk region. Now there are new narratives. We are supposedly creating buffer zones in the north. We need to stop consuming this, crap. We need to understand the real capabilities of the Russian Federation. They are not limitless. And where their actions are possible, well, those are the ones I report on. This is Donbas. This is the threat. Pokrovsk, Mirnohrad, Kostiantynivka, 2 districts in Donetsk, within which, by the way, this enemy advance, which I will now outline in broad strokes, has taken place recently. And in my opinion, it is very dangerous. I constantly talk about it as a rather dangerous section of the Russian advance. In fact, this enemy advance is now dividing our 2 bridgeheads. In this way, the enemy is also moving toward Dobropilya. Dobropilya is a key transportation hub along this route. It still remains between Kostiantynivka and Pokrovsk. And so the enemy is pushing both here toward Dobropilya and also advancing on Kostiantynivka from different flanks from various directions. Let's focus our attention on Kostiantynivka. It is the gateway. Kostiantynivka is the gateway to Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, the Kramatorsk-Sloviansk agglomeration, which is central to the part of Donbas controlled by the Ukrainian government. And not only is the enemy putting pressure on Kostiantynivka, but they are also carrying out certain preparatory actions along this section of the road from Bakhmut to Sloviansk. It's remarkable, but this section of the front had not been very active for quite a long time. However, in recent weeks, the enemy has been trying to test our defenses here, as can be seen in the footage from the 30th Mechanized Brigade, which clearly shows how our drones detect concentrations of enemy infantry that is moving using their favorite tactic on motorcycles. In principle, this is a typical tactic for the Russians, who are attacking and do not hesitate to lose this personnel. So our drones detect and destroy all these concentrations of enemy infantry by all available means: artillery, cluster munitions, strikes, drones, and drone-dropped munitions. Well, with strikes from FPV kamikaze drones, drops from various types of drones, bombers, and similar things, like from heavy-type copters, and all these enemy advances, or rather their attempts to probe and test our defenses, turned out to be futile. The Russians were destroyed. This is in the area of the settlement of Zalizniansk in Donetsk region, along the road from Bakhmut to Kostiantynivka to Sloviansk, I can even show you the exact geolocation where these clashes are taking place, where Russian infantry tried to advance. So this point is a little to the right, on the left flank of our defense, on the right flank of the Russian attack in the settlement of Zaliznianske. By the way, there is a distinctive lake here, which was also visible in those videos I showed. Even here, the enemy is trying to advance. The enemy is trying to put pressure on Chasiv Yar, but thank God nothing is working out for them at the moment. The situation here is good now. Well, relatively good. It's relatively stable at the moment, thanks in particular to the 24th Brigade, which a few days ago released a video showing how enemy boxes, that's what they call armored vehicles, were carrying out this attack toward our positions. Not only were there airborne infantry fighting vehicles and Tiger armored vehicles, but also assault troops on motorcycles carrying out these attacks toward our positions. Recently, it has actually been possible to somewhat stabilize the situation in Chasiv Yar, and these enemy attacks have not been successful. They have no chance of continuing to put pressure on Kostiantynivka from the north. But that's just for now. If the enemy gains further prospects of advancing toward the administrative borders of Kostiantynivka from the south, which we'll discuss now, the situation in Chasiv Yar will become, to put it mildly, somewhat worse, because the enemy will then be able to concentrate more of its resources in this area. At the moment, the enemy certainly has an unrestrained desire to advance here, but as we can see, particularly from this video showing the destruction of enemy armored vehicles, the Russian occupying forces are not experiencing any success. So where is the enemy having success? Not on this northern flank, but the southern flank is, let's say, rather vulnerable. It's vulnerable because the enemy, along the direction of the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad-Kostiantynivka road, has already reached Popovy Yar. They are already pressing on Rusin Yar, on its outskirts, and are essentially in the vicinity of Yablunivka. Romanivka and Zoraya are completely occupied. The situation in Stara Mikolaivka is unclear. Supposedly our defense is still holding there, but under these conditions it can't last long. And at close range, the Russians are already actually fighting in Yablunivka, posing the same potential threat to the rear of our forces in the Pokrovske, well, in the Toretsk direction, threatening to bring their troops directly onto the highway leading straight to Kostiantynivka. So right here from the southern flank towards Kostiantynivka, there is an issue. In addition, the enemy can just as easily advance from here to the west and northwest toward Dobropilia, aiming to disrupt the logistics of Kostiantynivka. In short, friends, a full-scale battle for the Kostiantynivka agglomeration has already begun, and so far it is not quite in our favor. There are currently no magic solutions to immediately stop the enemy's advantage, which they have gained in terms of technology, resources, and numbers. I am placing some hope on the involvement of additional units from our drone line project, specifically the advanced UAV units. For example, the K2 regiment, which, as I understand it, is only now returning to the front after reorganization, and the Rarog Unmanned Systems Regiment, when they are directly engaged in these battles for the Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, and Kostiantynivka agglomerations, I think things will become a little easier for us. Because right now, as of today, the main task is essentially to destroy the enemy UAV units that are disrupting Ukrainian logistics in this area at a range of 15 to 20 kilometers. To destroy their UAV units by deploying our own units that can operate at a range of about 40 kilometers against them. That's roughly how I see this task and its execution in the near future, particularly during the enemy's summer offensive campaign. So that's how things are at the front for us. It's tough, really tough. The most difficult situation, I repeat, is in Donbass. This is the hardest, the biggest challenge we are facing. As for other matters, there's no need to panic, at least for now, not so drastically or severely. Thank you for your attention. Please give a like at the end of watching this video. Subscribe to our channel, leave your comments, and take care of yourselves. All the best. See you next time.